Bill Ackman owns 12 stocks in his Pershing Square portfolio worth $10.4 billion. In this video, we're covering his top 10 biggest positions, starting with number 10, Nike. Bill Ackman just bought Nike last quarter, and it's the smallest holding on our list, coming in at $237 million. Nike is the $116 billion athletic apparel giant, trading just $7 above its 52-week low. Today, 8 super investors own Nike, and 5 of them added to it in the last quarter. Nike's been one of the top performing stocks in its history, but they've actually trailed the market in the last decade. Some of this stems from fears that the company's growth has stalled. Indeed, this is the case with their sales. But their free cash flows and earnings are up in recent years, and Nike still earns very high returns on capital. Potentially another good thing for shareholders is Nike's returned a lot of money to them. They bought back shares in every year except 2020. And Nike is a dividend growth stock. Right now, they pay a 1.92% dividend yield that they've grown 19 years in a row. Nike grew their dividends by 8.8% last year alone, and coupled with their buybacks have a 4.5% shareholder yield. These growth fears and recent competitor success means that Nike trades well below its historical price to sales, though this is still out ahead of their earnings or cash flows currently. The market may look for Nike to rebound, as a Guru Focus value comes in at $114 per share, which is $50 above their current stock price. Their current cash flows support a 17% upside, and that's the same target price for analysts. Bill Ackman is a legendary value investor who founded Pershing Square Capital Management in 2003. He's known for working with managers hands-on and sometimes being an activist investor to improve stock performance. Through Pershing Square focuses on long-term, value-oriented investing and employs a concentrated portfolio strategy. Ackman's next stock at number 9 is Brookfield Corporation, the Canadian private equity company. This is also a new holding for Ackman with a buy last quarter. Currently, this holding is worth $364 million. Brookfield has an $80 billion market cap and it trades just $3 below its 52-week highs. Ackman's one of 5 super investors holding Brookfield. Josh Tarasoff has 17.5% of his portfolio invested, and so does Chuck Akre, who has 6.75% of his portfolio. Brookfield's numbers look somewhat similar to Nike in that they've grown, but that growth has slowed more recently. Still, they generate a lot of cash flow. One thing to notice is the company's added a lot more debt, especially in the last decade. Brookfield's had years where they've issued a lot of shares for acquisitions, but more recently they've also been buying back some shares. They also pay a small, modest dividend yield of 0.59%. Today, a Guru Focus value for the company only comes in at $43.50 per share. That's down $10 or 20% from their current stock price. And analysts have their target price right at about their current stock price as well. If you're enjoying the video and want to support the channel, be sure to click the first link in the description. That'll take you to Global Value's affiliate, Interactive Brokers. Just by clicking the link and researching their brokerage options, you support the channel. The 8th stock in Ackman's portfolio is Alphabet, the parent company of Google and YouTube. This is a $675 million holding that Ackman bought a lot of back when Alphabet's stock price was depressed in 2023. More recently, in 2024, he modestly trimmed his holding. Alphabet is the single most owned super investor stock. 33 of them own this, and this is led by Li Lu and Alta Rock Partners as percentages of their portfolios. Today, Alphabet is a $2.1 trillion business that trades $20 below its 52-week high. Despite some bumps in the road, Alphabet's been a top-performing stock in its history as a public company and in the last decade. They have a strong net cash position, earn high returns, generate lots of free cash flow, and have grown by a lot in the last 5 years. On top of this, they bought back shares in the last 5 years, and in 2024, they started paying a dividend. Right now, Alphabet pays a 0.47% dividend yield. Compared to their big tech peers, Alphabet seems to trade more in line with historical valuations. Canadian Pacific Kansas City is stock number 7 in Ackman's portfolio, and it's been a long time holding. This is currently valued at $1.2 billion, and he added a lot to this company back in 2022. Most recently, again, he slightly trimmed his holding in this one. After the merger with Kansas City Southern, Canadian Pacific Kansas City is a $72 billion railroading giant. It trades in the middle of its 52-week range, just $9 above its lows. Canadian Pacific Kansas City is owned by 6 super investors in total, and this is led by Ackman, who has the biggest position in the company, followed closely by Chris Hone. This Class 1 railroad merger was a huge deal back in 2021. The company issued a lot of shares and took on debt to make this happen. Since then, their profits and cash flows haven't quite materialized and their returns on capital have suffered. Still, it looks like the company is trading above its historical valuation based on their sales and profitability. Next at number 6, we have Alphabet's Class C shares. The only difference from the other holding is their voting rights. Otherwise, the company has the same economic rights. This is a $1.3 billion holding for Ackman, and together Alphabet makes up a $2 billion holding in his portfolio. For the Class C shares, he's the third biggest super investor. Now on to stock number 5. That stock is Howard Hughes Holdings. Ackman's the only super investor with this one, with it making up 12% of his portfolio. This may be the smallest company we look at on our list, with just a $3.8 billion market cap. Today, the stock trades $6 below its 52-week highs. Howard Hughes is a commercial real estate development company that's suffered in the last decade. Over this time, their stock price has trended lower. Their numbers can be hard to make out, but this is likely a mix of being an asset play and a turnaround story for Ackman. Today, they trade favorably compared to their historical sales valuations, but they're above their tangible book and projected free cash flow numbers. Restaurant Brands International, or QSR, is the fourth biggest stock in Ackman's portfolio at a $1.6 billion holding. He bought a lot of this stock during the COVID-19 pandemic, but he's sold more recently, selling toward the end of 2023 and in the beginning of 2024. QSR owns 4 iconic brands in Tim Hortons, Burger King's, Popeyes, and Firehouse Subs. Today, they're a $22 billion market cap and they trade just $4 above their 52-week low. Ackman and Prem Watsa are the only 2 super investors with a holding in the company, and Ackman's is by far the biggest. QSR has struggled to keep pace with the market in the last decade. While they've grown sales, their margins are down and they're generating lower amounts of free cash flow and earnings. In the past, they had issued a lot of shares for acquisitions, and part of this lack of share issuance is why their returns on capital have increased. Not as well known, Restaurant Brands is actually a dividend growth stock. Right now, they pay an above average market beating 3.31% dividend yield that they increased by 4.6% last year, and they've grown their dividends 9 years in a row. A GF value for the company today sits at $85 per share, which is $15 above their current stock price. Their cash flows, however, project the company's almost exactly fairly valued. Analysts are more bullish than this, with a 19% upside and an $83 target price. Chipotle Mexican Grill is one of Ackman's oldest holdings, and it's been one of his most successful. Right now, his position's valued at $1.6 billion, but he sold a lot of shares in 5 of the last 6 quarters. A similar situation, Chipotle is only owned by 2 super investors, with Ackman's holding being by far the biggest. The fast casual Mexican food giant is an $80 billion market cap that trades in between its 52-week high and low. In the last decade, this is one of the top performing stocks in the market, even despite their food health scares back in the mid-2010s. Their numbers show a lot of growth and they've earned high returns on capital in most of these years. But this may not help at the higher valuations, which are way ahead of all of their historical numbers. Their GF value today is $49 per share, which is $7 or 15% lower than their current stock price. Analysts want to see the boom continue with a 10.5% upside from here. Ackman's second biggest stock is the largest that we can see show up on his 13F. This is Hilton Worldwide Holdings. Hilton is a $2 billion holding and again one of Ackman's oldest. He originally had an average buy price of $83 per share and now it's trading for more than $200 a share. Hilton's the $58 billion hotel brand, trading just $6 below its 52-week high. Altogether, Ackman's the largest of the 4 super investors invested in Hilton. It's 18.5% of his US-listed assets, and this is followed closely by Dennis Hong of Shaw Spring Partners with a 14.4% position. Hilton stock has performed very well in the last decade, even despite the sharp drawdown in 2020. Since then, it's rebounded incredibly well. Today, things are finally better than where they were at in 2019. It was a tough journey for the company, but they've generated very strong sales and cash flows in the last couple of years. They didn't even need to take on a ton of debt to stay alive. Instead, the company's been returning capital to shareholders. They've actively repurchased shares in 2 of the last 3 and 6 of the last 7 years. And they even pay a slight dividend with just a 0.26% yield. But despite that recent success, it still looks like the company's trading well above their historical valuations. This hasn't helped that it's taken them a few years to get back to their pre-pandemic numbers. The analysts watching this company, who are usually bullish on the others, have their target price exactly at Hilton's stock price today. Now, do you know what the number one stock in Bill Ackman's portfolio is? If you follow him closely, you might, but this is hidden from the majority as it doesn't show on his 13F, and you have to read his shareholder report to find this out. Universal Music Group is the $5.3 billion holding that makes up a whopping 1/3 of Bill Ackman's portfolio. The stock is listed in the Netherlands and is currently trading for 23 euros a share. That's $3 above its 52-week low and $5 below its 52-week high. Ackman owns their European-listed shares, and Sequoia Fund is the only other US super investor who owns shares listed in the United States, with that making up 5.4% of their portfolio. Universal Music is the largest of the world's 3 major record companies. It includes notable names like Interscope, Capitol Music, Motown Records, and Def Jam, and it produces some of the most successful artists in the world today, including Taylor Swift, Drake, The Weeknd, and Morgan Wallen. They've only been listed since 2021, and since then, they're down 6.5%. This is perhaps a wonderful royalty company that's steadily grown their sales, earnings, and cash flows. They've even reduced debt pretty dramatically since being listed. And while this debt has been expensive, they do earn above average returns on capital in most years. Still, despite their strong growth and business model, Universal Music may be trading way ahead of their historical valuations. Now, these are the top 10 stocks Bill Ackman owns in his portfolio. Which of them are you the most interested in? Let me know in the comments below. Be sure to like and share the video if you enjoyed, subscribe to the channel for more, and have a great day.